The bus rattled and shook as it rolled down the crowded city street. It was evening, and the sky outside was turning dark, painted with streaks of orange and purple. Every single seat inside the bus was taken, and people were squeezed together shoulder to shoulder. Some were tired after a long day at work. Some were students carrying heavy backpacks full of books. Others clutched shopping bags filled with groceries or clothes. The air inside the bus was thick with different smells. You could smell strong coffee from a man holding a paper cup, sweet perfume from a woman in a bright scarf, and the faint metallic scent of the old bus rails. All those smells mixed together in a way that wasn't very pleasant, but no one complained. They were used to it. In the middle row, a man sat in a way that made many passengers frown quietly. He wasn't just sitting normally. He had stretched his legs out arrogantly across the aisle and placed his dirty sneakers on the empty seat opposite him. He took up more space than he needed, acting as if the bus belonged to him. His sunglasses reflected the dull light inside, even though the sun outside was already fading and the sky was dim. He chewed gum loudly, making popping noises that grated on everyone's nerves. But nobody said anything. People just shifted uncomfortably and looked away, not wanting to start trouble. Then the bus door hissed open with a squeak, and a man stepped inside. His name was Steven Seagal. Most of the passengers barely noticed him at first. He wasn't dressed like a celebrity, and he didn't wear fancy clothes like someone important. He wore a plain black jacket that hung loosely on his tall frame. His long hair was tied back neatly. His expression was calm, almost unreadable, like a stone face. But if you looked closely, closer than most people dared, you could see something different about him. He carried himself in a way that was quiet but strong. He moved like a big cat, steady and careful, every step controlled. There was a stillness about him, the kind that made people feel that he could spring into action at any second. Steven walked slowly down the aisle, his eyes scanning for a seat. The bus was packed, and there was only one spot left. It was the seat across from the rude man with his legs sprawled out. Steven stopped in front of it. His gaze dropped to the sneakers resting arrogantly on the seat. He spoke evenly, his voice low but clear enough for everyone nearby to hear. "That's my seat." The man didn't move his legs. He tilted his head lazily, chewing his gum and smirking. "What seat? Looks taken to me." A murmur ran through the bus. People glanced nervously at each other. They could feel the tension building, like a storm about to break. Steven's eyes didn't shift. His voice was calm, but his words were firm. "Move your legs." The man leaned back even more, grinning as if he was on stage. He wanted an audience. Or what? You gonna cry? Poor old man can't find a place to sit. He pressed his shoes harder into the seat cushion, grinding dirt into it. "This here is mine now. Go find somewhere else." From the back of the bus, a few teenagers snickered. Some passengers turned away, not wanting to get caught in the middle. Others glanced at Steven with worry. The rude man looked around proudly. He thought he had humiliated a stranger in front of everyone, and he loved it. Steven's jaw tightened, but he didn't shout. He didn't argue. Instead, he calmly lowered himself into the seat anyway, even though the man's legs were still in the way. His big frame settled into place, radiating quiet strength. The rude passenger laughed louder. "Look at this guy. Sitting under my feet like a dog." He pushed his sneakers forward until they pressed against Steven's lap. Now the whispers grew louder. The whole bus buzzed with shock. People leaned in, phones already being raised to record what might happen. Steven's sharp, dangerous eyes lifted slowly to meet the man's. His voice was soft, but it sent chills through the air. "I'll give you one last chance. Move your legs." The man scoffed and leaned forward, smirking. "And if I don't?" Before anyone could even blink, Steven's hands shot forward. In one swift move, he gripped the man's ankle, twisted sharply, and yanked. The man howled as his body slid off the seat and crashed onto the aisle floor with a heavy thud. The bus gasped all at once. Silence spread quickly, like a wave. Steven stood, towering above the man. With one firm step, he pressed his boot down onto the man's chest, pinning him to the floor with terrifying ease. His voice growled low, heavy with meaning. "You thought this was your seat. You thought humiliating people made you strong. But respect isn't given to bullies. It's taken back from them." The man struggled, writhing on the floor, but Steven's weight held him down easily. Passengers stared in awe. Some clutched their bags tighter. Others lifted their phones higher, capturing every second. Steven leaned closer, his voice sharp as a blade. "Never put your legs on me again, or on anyone else." Then he released him. The man scrambled back into his seat, His face red with embarrassment, sweat dripping down his forehead. His arrogance was shattered. He quickly tucked his legs tightly under the bench, not daring to look at anyone. Steven sat back down calmly, as if nothing had happened. The bus rolled forward, the engine humming, headlights flickering across shop windows. Slowly, whispers began to rise among the passengers. First soft, then growing louder. Seagal. 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 They had witnessed something unforgettable, the day a rude fool put his legs on the wrong man, and Steven Seagal taught him a lesson he would never forget. But the story didn't end there. The silence after Steven's first move, grabbing the ankle and dumping the man on the floor, was heavy. People shifted in their seats nervously. Some were wide-eyed with awe. Others held their belongings tighter, afraid that more violence was coming. The arrogant man sat back in his seat, panting. His pride had been crushed deeper than his sore wrist. He tucked his legs under him, trying to act small, but he couldn't hide from the stares. He could feel the smirks of other passengers stabbing at him like knives. He could hear the whispers behind his back. He could see the phones still recording, their little red lights shining. He had been made into a fool. And humiliation like that doesn't disappear easily. You think you're tough? He suddenly spat, his voice loud and angry. His face flushed red with rage. You think you can embarrass me in front of all these people and just walk away? Steven didn't turn his head. He didn't look at the man. He sat calmly, staring out the window, his big hands resting gently on his knees. His silence wasn't a weakness. It was worse. It was a dismissal. He was showing that the man didn't even matter. That cold indifference snapped the last of the man's control. He jumped to his feet so quickly that his shoulder slammed into the metal pole beside him. The bus swayed. Coffee spilled. Bags slid off laps. People gasped. You made a mistake, the man roared. His voice was shaking with rage. I don't care who you are, I'll break you right here. Steven finally turned. His eyes were slow and cold, heavy with power. His voice was calm but commanding. Sit down. The command wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But the weight of it froze half the passengers in their seats. The man roared and charged forward. His fists swung wildly, sloppy with anger but dangerous because of his size and strength. Stop! Someone screamed. But Steven moved like water. His hand shot up and caught the punch midair. It stopped instantly, as if the man had punched a wall. Steven's other hand clamped down on his wrist and twisted sharply. A loud crack echoed through the bus. The man howled. In the same motion, Steven yanked him forward. The man's face smashed into the metal pole with a loud clang. The sound rang down the bus like a bell. Blood sprayed from the man's nose, staining his shirt red. The passengers shrieked, some jumping out of their seats. Phones captured every angle. Even the bus driver glanced nervously in the mirror, but he didn't stop driving. Even he wanted to see what would happen. The man staggered, clutching his broken nose. You broke my nose, he gasped, tears filling his eyes. Steven rose slowly, towering like a giant. His coat opened, revealing his broad chest and huge frame. Each of his steps thudded heavily on the bus floor as he closed the distance. His voice was calm, but his words cut deep. You broke your pride. The man's eyes burned with desperation. He swung again, wild and uncoordinated. Steven slipped aside easily, moving like flowing water. His elbow snapped into the man's ribs. A sickening crack echoed. The man gasped, folding over in pain. Steven's knee shot up, smashing into the man's chest. The impact lifted him off his feet and sent him crashing into a row of seats. A woman screamed as the man tumbled across her lap before rolling off, wheezing. But he wasn't done. His fury pushed him to keep fighting. He grabbed the nearest thing he could find, an umbrella from the rack above. He swung it like a bat, whooshing through the air. Steven ducked smoothly. His palm struck the man's wrist, and the umbrella clattered to the floor. Then Steven's boot slammed into the man's stomach with crushing force. The man flew backward into the bus window. The glass rattled but didn't shatter. His breath left him in a ragged wheeze. People clutched their phones tighter, their hands shaking as they filmed. Every second was being recorded. The chant began again, soft at first. Nervous. Hesitant. Seagal. Seagal. Then louder. Stronger. Seagal. 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 The bus shook with the sound. The man stood in the middle of the bus aisle, swaying on his feet. His face was pale. Sweat dripped down his forehead. Blood trickled from his nose and stained his shirt. His chest rose and fell fast, like he had just run a race. He tried to sound strong, but his voice cracked. It was weak, like glass about to break. You don't scare me," he stuttered, pointing at Steven. "You're nothing. Nothing." But his words didn't match the fear in his eyes. He was shaking. His body wanted to run, but his pride wanted to stay. Steven, sitting calmly, didn't even flinch. His face was unreadable, like a mask. His eyes, though, grew sharp like the edge of a blade. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He simply stood up and closed the space between them in 2 quiet steps. His hand shot out and grabbed the man's collar. The move was fast, too fast for the eye. The passengers gasped. Some even dropped their phones, but most kept recording. With terrifying ease, Steven slammed the man against the bus seats. The frame groaned loudly, metal screeching under the force. The man let out a pained grunt. His legs bent awkwardly as his back hit the hard edge of the chair. People jumped away. They pressed themselves against the windows or stood on their seats, trying to give space. But none of them looked away. Every phone was up, glowing like tiny stars, filming every second. Steven's voice boomed, louder than the engine, louder than the gasps. It filled the entire bus like thunder. "You thought humiliating me made you strong," he said, his voice deep and steady. "But arrogance doesn't make you strong. It makes you weak. And weakness like yours." He slammed the man into the seats again. The sound was louder this time, like wood cracking. The bully cried out, his breath catching. "Always breaks." The man whimpered, his voice tiny now. His hands clawed at Steven's wrist, but they were weak and shaky. His strength was gone, his confidence drained. Fear filled every part of him. Steven finally let go. The man dropped like a bag of stones, landing in the aisle. He groaned, clutching his ribs, curling into himself like a child. The bus went silent. For one moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the man's pitiful wheezing. Then the silence broke. Cheers exploded through the bus. Hands clapped. Shouts filled the air. The sound of stomping feet shook the floor. People raised their phones higher, chanting in one strong voice. "Seagal! Seagal! Seagal!" The name bounced around the walls of the bus. Steven didn't smile. He didn't raise his hands. He simply adjusted his coat, smoothing the fabric neatly. He sat back down, folded his arms, and closed his eyes as though nothing had happened. The bus kept rolling down the dark street, lights flashing past the windows. Every passenger leaned close to whisper to the person beside them. Their voices were hushed but excited. Their eyes stayed locked on the man curled in the aisle. The bully had tried to look tough. He had put his feet on the seats and laughed at Steven. But now he sat broken, his pride shattered. Everyone on the bus knew they would never forget what they had just seen. Whispers flew from row to row. "I can't believe it. Did you see how fast Steven moved? That guy picked the wrong seat. The wrong man." Phones hovered everywhere, recording the broken man from every angle. Steven sat calm, his breathing steady, as if he hadn't even moved. He looked once at the crumpled figure, then turned his gaze back out the window. The city lights streaked past, silent and cold. The bus driver risked a glance in the mirror. His eyes were wide, but he said nothing. Even he knew, this was not his business. He kept driving. At the next stop, the doors hissed open. For a moment, nobody moved. Then slowly, all eyes turned to the bully. He didn't want to stand. He wanted to disappear. But he could feel Steven's calm eyes watching him. He could hear the whispers, the laughs, the jeers. Shame weighed on his shoulders like a heavy stone. Finally, trembling, he pushed himself up. His legs wobbled like sticks. He leaned on the metal pole for balance. He looked like an old man, broken and tired. "Get out, fool," someone near the door muttered. "Next time, keep your legs to yourself," another said louder. Laughter rippled across the bus like a wave. The man's face turned bright red. Blood streaked his cheeks. He stumbled toward the open door, one shaky step at a time. He clutched his ribs, his face twisted in pain. The night swallowed him as he stepped off the bus. He disappeared down the street, limping into the dark, his pride left behind. The doors closed. The bus erupted again. Cheers shook the roof. Clapping thundered. The chant grew stronger than before. "Seagal! Seagal! Seagal!" Phones lifted high. Flashes sparkled. But Steven sat still, his hands folded, his eyes forward. His silence was louder than all their cheers. By the time the bus reached the station, the video was already racing across the internet. Within the hour, Clips spread everywhere. By the end of the night, headlines filled the news. Bus bully learns brutal lesson from Steven Seagal. Passenger mocks Seagal, regrets it seconds later. Feet on the wrong seat. Arrogance meets justice. Comments poured in. I could watch this all day. That guy didn't just lose a fight. He lost his dignity. Seagal is still the master. Calm, controlled, terrifying. By morning, millions had watched it. TV hosts argued about it. Some tried to say it was just a fight on a bus. But most agreed, it was more. It was a bully learning the hardest lesson of his life. The people who had been there told the story again and again. Weeks later, they still remembered every detail. One woman told her family, he didn't even shout. He didn't brag. He just moved. And the man was broken. A man told his coworkers, it was like water smashing stone. He didn't fight. He ended it. Even teenagers, who had laughed at first, grew quiet with respect. They replayed the video not to laugh, but to learn. Some even signed up for martial arts classes. I want to control myself like a seagull, they said. The bully became a ghost in his own town. People whispered when he walked past, that's him. The bus guy. The one Seagal destroyed. Friends avoided him. Strangers sneered. Some even played the video on their phones when he walked by, reminding him of his shame. His arrogance had been ripped away. Only the memory of his humiliation stayed. At home, Steven poured himself a cup of tea. His movements were slow, calm, steady. His wife, Maya Seagal, raised an eyebrow when he sat down. Rough night? She asked softly. Steven shrugged. Just another fool who thought arrogance made him strong. She smiled faintly, knowing his answer already. Did you teach him? Steven lifted his eyes. They were sharp, even in the quiet kitchen. I always do. For Steven, it was never about fists. Never about winning. It was about teaching. Tonight, the lesson had been delivered, not just to one man, but to everyone who had watched. A week later, Steven walked down a quiet street. The evening sun cast long shadows. A young man, no older than 20, hurried up to him. He held his phone nervously in his hands. Mr. Seagal, he stammered. I saw the video. That guy had it coming. But, how did you stay so calm? I would have lost control. Steven studied him for a long moment. His voice was soft when he spoke, but every word was heavy. Anger is easy, Steven said. Arrogance is easier. But control, that is strength. Anyone can fight. Few can finish a fight before it even begins. The young man nodded, his eyes wide. The words sank deep, planting something stronger than admiration. Steven walked on. His shadow stretched long behind him. Whispers followed, but he paid no mind. Because the fight on the bus was never about fists. It was never about blood. It was about respect. About the difference between arrogance and true strength. And everyone who had seen it on the bus, online, or on the news, would always remember the day a foolish man put his feet on Steven Seagal and learned the hard truth. Respect isn't demanded. Respect is earned.